Hello, friends. Welcome to our TEDdy trials. And today we are going to post our first trial. Okay. So, this is the effectiveness of a right heart catheterization, the pulmonary artery catheterization in initial care of critically ill patients. So, this was a study which is posted in JAMA. Okay. So, why this particular study? Is we are not going to concentrate on the study per se. Okay, this is going to be a very challenging study because we are not going to concentrate on the study, but we are going to concentrate on something called as propensity score. Okay, so this entire piece of video is going to speak about what is propensity score and how it's going to be useful for us. For example, dear friends, when there are two set of people and there are a lot of confounding factors, you are not able to match both the teams, then how are you going to compare them? For example, in one team there are very young people like less than 20 years, in other team there are people who are more than 80 years, and you're going to give vaccine for both. Do you think that you can compare the incident of side effects in both the teams? It's not going to be obvious, right? Because right side is 20 years old, left side is 80 years old, so it's not going, you won't be able to compare these groups at all. So if one single variable itself is shows such huge difference, then what if there are a lot of variables? Like say the B team has a lot of hypertensive patients, lot of diabetic patients, lot of smoking patients compared to team A. Then how are you going to match them? Do you get my point? So this study had these difficulties and they have handled it with care. And that's why we are going to see this study. Okay, this is going to be important basic thing in reading all the trials and journals forthcoming in our page, right? So the effectiveness of right heart catheterization. So this is a journal of American Medical Association, the JAMA, with an impact factor of about 56.27. Okay, the publisher is American Medical Association. The first issue date was 1883 and published, this particular journal is published in 1996. The author is Connors. So why this study? Okay, so regarding the right heart catheterization or the pulmonary artery catheterization, which provides valuable input about the fluid resuscitation, cardiac output, all this stuff. A lot of cardiologists and intensivists believed and still believe that it's going to be very useful parameter, but there is no level 1, level 2 or level 3 evidence for it. There is no meta-analysis, there is no case control study, there is no huge manpower study for this particular thing to be proven as beneficial. Okay, only a level 4 evidence, that is expert opinion, only a level 4 evidence is present. So we need to find out whether we can get a level 3, level 2 evidence for this. And RCT, randomized control trials, were not able to be conducted. So you should know there are two types of trials, right? One is a cohort study, one is a case control study. What is the difference? Case control study means one side you have a case and one side you have a control. Okay, you can match these people even before the start of the study. And it's very easy. For example, one team smokes, other team does not smoke. And you can compare them and you can see who is getting lung cancer on a higher side. So this is a case control study. But a cohort study is a observational longitudinal study or interventional longitudinal study. Okay, from you're just going to observe a team of people and you're going to get the data and you're going to proceed with it. So you may not have a typical controls in this. Fine. So if you have a randomized control, like a case control study, it is easy to tell a decision. But RCTs were never conducted for this particular parameter to check the right heart catheterization's benefits. Okay, why RCTs were not performed? Case control studies were attempted initially, but when the physicians feel that this right heart catheterization is beneficial, they were not ready to put their patients in control team who is not going to receive this. Physicians were not willing to put their patients in control teams who is not going to receive this. That's the reason many of the RCTs were stopped even when they started. So, other observational studies, that's the longitudinal studies, just they were able to conduct the study, but they were not successful in matching the groups effectively. Like as I told, more sicker patients got the opportunity of this right heart catheterization, where a relatively a stable case were not having right heart catheterization. So obviously the mortality, morbidity, the cost is going to be higher for this more sick patients, right? So we don't know whether the sickness killed the patient or the right heart catheterization killed the patient. So matching has to be perfect. So none of the observational studies made this adjustments very proper. So our aim is to examine the association between the right heart catheterization. We will use the term RHC, okay? RHC during the first 24 hours and the outcomes, survival, length of stay, intensity of care and cost of care. This is a prospective cohort study and this was done in 5 hospitals between 1989 and 1994. Outcome is survival, cost of care, intensity of care, length of stay in ICU hospital. So methodology, there is one study called as support, the study to understand prognosis and preferences for outcomes and risk of treatment. It's called support study. Okay, so this was enrolling people from ER itself based on 9 disease categories with who are sick. 9 disease categories who are sick. The meaning of sick is they have a mortality of 50% with at an aggregate of 6 months. So this support study enrolled people who are sick from ER itself. So these are the 9 categories: acute respiratory failure, COPD, congestive heart failure, cirrhosis, non-traumatic coma, colon cancer with mets to liver, non-small cell cancer of the lung, and multi-organ system dysfunction with malignancy, or MOSF with sepsis. These are the 9 categories basically. So the support study was enrolling sick patients in ER. So in this study, which we are now currently dealing, any patient from the support study who got admitted in medical ICU or any ICU is included in the criteria. Okay, so exclusion is less than 18 or death within 48 hours who are not able to communicate properly in English, or acute psychiatric disorders, pregnancy, AIDS, acute burns and head trauma. All these patients were followed up for 6 months. So the support study enrolled 9,105 subjects from the ER itself, and out of them 5,735 reached medical ICU, the ICU. So right heart catheterization was performed in 2,184, not performed in 3,551 out of the 5,735. So now we have 2 groups. Group A, RHC was performed. Group B, RHC is not performed. RHC is performed in 2,184, not performed in 3,551. So these are the characteristics, the crude characteristics of people in team A and team B. I know it's very small. I'm going to just zoom it for you. This is a zoomed version. Okay. So here you can see no RHC, people who did not receive a catheterization. If you see that these 2 batches, groups, are not looking similar. For example, age more than 80, you have 14% in non-RHC and only 8% in RHC. Okay. And white is all equal, and acute renal failure is 34% in non-RHC but 27% in RHC patients, and other parameters like other diseases are 24%, and metastasis for 18%, and DNR status for 20%, and Apache score is only 51 in no RHC, and radar catheterization is like 61. So and you can see that length of hospital stay is 4.6 in no RHC, and the PF ratio is 240 in no RHC, means patient is better. 192 in patient who received RHC, the patient was sicker. Albumin in gram per is 32 and this is 29. So overall, if you see, it is not well matched. Okay, these groups are not well matched. So with this crude data, if you can see that without any matching, no RHC, 30 days survival is around 69 days. If you put a catheter, survival is 62 days. In 2 months, without catheter, 62 days of survival. With the catheter, 54 days of survival is less. So without catheter, 53 days of survival in 6 months. With the catheter, 46 days. So this says that the catheter, using a catheter is harmful. The total cost is very less, 74 into $1,000 if there is no catheter, but 131 into $1,000 if there is a catheter. And even length of hospital stay without a catheter is only 10 days, with the catheter is 15 days. Okay, so it shows a very, very gross harmful effect if you use the catheter, if you use the crude data, the raw data. Okay, so how you are going to adjust these two groups based on their variables. Okay, out of the 5735 patients were included, so we are going to match the group A and group B. How are you going to do that? Okay, so there comes a zone called as a propensity score. Okay, this can be asked in exams, dear friends. I know it's going to be difficult and new, but you need to learn this propensity score. So what is propensity score? It's very easy. For example, what I will do in group A, there are patients with people who are 40 years, 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, say. And in group B, there are like 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. Okay, how to match them? It's very easy. For the age, there are people of 40 years in team A and there are 40 years in team B. Agreed? Okay, for better understanding, I can put it this way. In group A, there are like from 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, 80 years, 90 years. You can keep from 50, there are 90 years. In group B, there are like from 30 years to 60 years. Overlapping, you can see that 50 years is present in both, 60 years is present in both, right? So those alone you can take up and you can match and you can give a prediction. So if you have a single variable, you can do this. But what if you have multiple variables? Not only there is a difference in age, there is difference in sex, there is difference in smoking, there is difference in diabetes, there is difference in hypertension, there is difference in tablet medications they are taking, the difference in weight, difference in previous surgery, difference in age, difference in immunosuppression, difference in dialysis. If you have a lot of variables, then to match them, how can you do that? So there comes something called as a propensity score. Propensity score has a formula. Okay, how much ever variables you want, you can put it into it, and you can derive one single number out of all the variables you have included. Okay, so each subject, each individual subject will be given one number, that is a one propensity score. Okay, you can put all the variables in the propensity score formula so that you derive one single number, and that number you can label that particular patient. Okay, so now if you do that, taking all the variables included, each and every patient in group A and group B will be having some individual numbers. For example, group A, the first person gets a number of 0.1, second person gets a number of 0.2, third person gets a propensity score of 0.3, say. Like that, it's like up to 10, you have 0.9 and 1, right? In group B, if you have a propensity score starting at 0.5, then the second person 0.6, third person 0.7, fourth person 0.8, and so on. You'll be able to match them very easily. You can match the 0.2 in group A with 0.2 in group B, 0.3 in group A to 0.3 in group B, 0.4 in group A to 0.4 in group B. Like that, you can join. If there are certain propensity numbers which is not getting matched, you can forget them, just leave off. Okay, so this is how you can create a propensity number using all the variables, right? So that's what you're going to do. So propensity score. Hope you got the idea, right? You are taking two different groups. Out of the two different groups, there will be lot of variables in which these two groups are different. So you are taking consideration of all the variables, put into a formula, the propensity score formula, deriving one single number. Based on that number, whoever gets the same number in both the teams, you are going to pair them. Okay, propensity score, for example, propensity score of 0.2 in team A matches with the propensity of 0.2 in team B. Propensity of 0.3 in team A patches with 0.3 in team B. Like that, the same propensity score gets paired. Okay, that's called pairing. Okay, so once you pair, the remaining people who don't have a similar propensity score, mutual propensity score, they are neglected. Okay, this is called as pairing. This is called case matching procedure. This is called as a case matching procedure. So adjustments were also made for case matching and multivariate analysis. We'll come to that. So this is done, dear friends. So we know that out of the 5,700 people, it was grouped into two groups, A and B, which contains 2,700 or 3,500 patients, right? So among that, propensity score was put, taking into all the variables. And after putting a propensity score, for each propensity score, they were matched. The same propensity score from team A and TB were matched, so that we got 1008 pairs. Okay, totally out of the 5700 candidates, we got only 1008 pairs. That is 2016 patients only ultimately got filtered. Okay, 1008 pairs. Now look at the parameters or the variables in the 1008 pair. Okay, it's almost looks similar. See that? All the parameters almost similar. So now you got two similar groups. Now you can compare any intervention and outcome directly. Okay, happy? Look at the groups. Group A is looking, the newly formed group A is looking similar to the newly formed group B now. So it's very, very easy to just compare the intervention and outcome. Okay, so certain people are very happy with it, they are going to proceed with it, but certain people doubt the effectiveness of propensity scoring system. So what they did is they went back to the first slide again. They said if it's only two variables or three variables, you can easily match. If you have only two variables or three variables different in group A and group B, you can easily match them. But if you have 50 variables, it's going to be difficult. So what the expert committee did was they combined all the variables and created a propensity score, right? So the propensity score is taken as one variable. Okay, each person has a propensity like 0.2, 0.3. That propensity score is taken as one variable. Along with that, those factors which they feel has severe influence on the patient's outcome were considered as a second variable, third variable, and fourth variable. Okay, hope I'm not confusing you. So for example, there are two teams which are significantly different in like 50 or 60 characteristics. So you cannot compare all the 60 characteristics. So you combined the 60 characteristics of each person into one single formula and prepared a propensity score. Okay, so you can end the job just by comparing the propensity score of two teams and create a outcome result. But the expert committee felt we need to give due respect to those variables which have significant influence. So what they're going to do is the person A in group A, the first person in group A has a propensity score, and also they gave due respect to those variables which they felt has great influence in the outcome. For example, in this, the right heart catheterization, okay, and they're going to check the outcome like mortality and stuff. So one they took as propensity score is one variable which they're going to compare. Second, as we know, the BP is a significant marker of death, right? So initial BP they took. The PF ratio, it's also very significant. So that they took. Like that, any significant variables which they feel is having gross influence on the outcome, that was taken given the status of individual variate. And like 3 or 4 variables they took like this, and they put it into multivariate regression analysis between the two groups, and they came for an outcome study. Hope the point is clear. Okay, so now this you need to understand, dear friends. Concentrate on this slide. It's very, very, very important. Okay, so initially you went inside a room, you saw some two teams, one team with a right heart catheterization, the A team, and the other team without a right heart catheterization. Okay, so before going to a conclusion, you felt that both the teams were not matched properly, and when you attempted to match, they were significantly different in lot of variables like age, sex, HIV status, immunosuppression. There are differences in lot of things. So you cannot handle lot of matching. So what you did, you took all the variables into one formula and created one propensity number. So every person has only one propensity number. But you are not very happy in handling only one propensity number in matching. So you gave due respect for some significant covariates. And you made 3 or 4 variables for it, like propensity number is 1, BP is 2, PF ratio is 3, like that you gave significant respect to certain variables, and with that 4 or 5 variables per person, you started matching with a multivariate regression analysis, and you're going to account for the outcome, right? Am I clear? So now, experts thought, is there a way to check whether the propensity is matched properly. We said na we are going to give propensity score number for each and every individual, and we are going to search a similar component on the opposite team, and you're going to match them. Okay, you cannot exactly match. There'll be some slight difference, like 0.1 or 0.2, like there'll be slight difference in matching, right? So overall, if you see, if you cumulatively add all the propensity score of team A, I mean those who are selected in the pair, and team B, you will see a gross difference in propensity scores. You got the point? You'll see a gross difference. For example, the team A's first person propensity score is 0.2, and you have matched that patient with a 0.21 in B. So difference is 0.1. If you do this for all 10 patients, it will come as 0.1 will be the difference. That's a huge difference, right? So you need to know whether the propensity score is matched properly. For that, what they did is, expert came inside and he said, let us not cumulatively add all the propensity score of team A or team B to compare. What we'll do is, we'll just make a tabular column. Okay, propensity score from 0 to 20, 20 to 40, 40 to 60, 60 to 80, 80 to 100. We'll create a graph. Okay, we'll put all the propensity scores of 0 to 20 of team A and team B together, and 20 to 40 we'll put team A and team B together. Score of 40 to 80 we'll put team A and team B together, and 80 to 100 we'll put team A and team B together. That is how this picture is formed. Okay, so this can be formed not only in a propensity score, you can form in any variables. And with this kind of split technique, you'll be able to clearly see that there is no much gross difference in this. But you cumulatively, if you add everything, you'll be seeing a gross difference between team A and team B. But if you put in this kind of split method, it'll be easily identify that there is no gross difference. This kind of split technique is called a stratification propensity score system. Okay, this technique is called a stratification. Okay, so this is one method where you can check whether the propensity score matching has been done properly. So all the parameters were in the study was analyzed by SAS software. And now, after propensity score, that means you have given due respect for all the variables you felt, and with that you create a propensity score, and you checked the propensity score, and you have matched them, and you had some 1008 pairs, and now you're going to check it. In that, 30-day survival is 67% in without catheter and 62% with catheter. In 60 days, it is 60 days survival, 60 days in no catheterization, and 54 days with catheter. At 180 days, 51 days no catheter people survived, and 46 percentage the RH people survived. Okay, length of hospital stay was 63 if you put a catheter, length of hospital stay of 56 if you don't put a catheter. Okay, even this has clearly shown right heart catheterization is harmful. Even after matching, even after proper propensity score, even after putting a sensitivity analysis for that propensity score, everything has been done. Still, this is showing right heart catheterization is harmful. Okay. So now is sensitivity analysis. Do you still believe that right heart catheterization is a false or a harmful thing, dear doctors? Because there are cardiologists still advocate and intensivists still advocate that right heart catheterization is beneficial. But our study is showing it is harmful. Okay, so what can we do? Number one, are we missing out any significant confounding factor? Are we missing out any gross significant confounding factor which is causing this mortality or other issues? So what they did was, they called up 13 practicing clinicians and asked them to tell, is there any confounding factor? Is there anything that is messing up here? So all the 13 practicing clinicians gave us a list of confounding factors, but they were already included in the study, number one. And next is, what they did was, they removed the largest variable. They checked the stability of the result. Okay, so what all variables we took all the variables and created a propensity score, and we also gave due respect again to the age, the BP, the PF ratio and stuff, right, which had significant influence. So to check the stability of the outcome, they removed that PF ratio and checked the same results. They removed the blood pressure and checked the same results. Like that, they removed one or two variables and they checked whether the results are stable. And to our surprise, it was stable. Okay. So another expert came inside and he said, what if there was a confounder factor? Even if there is a confounding factor, how serious, how significant, how important, how worth should that confounding factor be to change the results, to topple the result? Now our result is that right heart catheterization is completely harmful, right? To topple the result into right heart catheterization is completely beneficial. How much worth and significant and serious should that confounding factor be? Okay, if at all there should be any. So when that thought process came, they found out that if at all there is a new confounding factor, it has to be very, very, very important, like 6 folds deeper influence. If at all they missed out any confounding factor, such a confounding factor should have 6 times more influence on the outcome. Only then this result can be toppled. Okay. So if at all there is such a confounding factor, these 13 clinical practicing clinicians would have found it, right? So it tells you that it's missing. Sorry, it tells you that even if something is missed, it's not going to be very significant. And they've already checked the stability of the results by removing one or two variables also, but still it is stable. So as a result, RHC did not show any benefits in terms of outcome measures, rather proved to be harmful. Possible explanation is this catheterization has a line sepsis, bacterial endocarditis, large vein thrombosis, and prolonged hospital stay and increases cost. And just putting a catheter or any device is not going to be helpful, dear friends. The practicing physician should have the skill to learn the output from that, to read that particular monitor, right? If he doesn't know, it's going to be useless. And if you look at the style of the ICU, there are certain hospitals which use only the BP cuff to measure the BP. But there are certain hospitals which use some invasive techniques. So where do you think, dear friends, right heart catheterization is going to work? So all these hospitals had a style of invasive monitoring, right? It means that they are going to put some invasive devices for other parameters also, right? So more invasive style of treatment, more complication is going to be there. Even a Foley's catheter has some complications, right? So more invasive level of monitoring style, more complications bound to happen that style itself. So, and what is the change in therapy with RHC? People who had right heart catheterization had some inputs, right? Like it will give us a cardiac, what is the cardiac output, what is the fluid responsiveness, all these stuffs. So based on that, a supranormal cardiac output range was targeted, and often intervention was done, the fluid resuscitation or the BP resuscitation, all these things were done on a timely basis. So too much of intervention, too much of cook spoils the dish, right? So too much of supranormal targeting may end up harmful also. And last, fifth is, though I argued that there could not be a significant missing confounder, still there can be a confounder, who knows. So limitation, again, this is only an observational study. We are not able to conduct a case control study because the doctors still believe it's useful and they are not ready to put their patient control group where they are not going to receive the RHC. And a missing confounder can be there. And this is a practice only in the 15 ICUs and 5 tertiary care hospitals. We don't know how the rest of the world is. And this study says only the use of RHC in the first 24 hours of ICU stay. Okay, we don't know whether putting it on day 5 or day 6 is going to be beneficial. Okay. So suggestions RCT to be performed for better confirmation of result. Okay, thank you. So what I am trying to tell in this is that, so this is our study about right heart catheterization from this journal. Only the expert opinion is there, but there is no evidence-based results for this. So today we are going to trying to do an observational study with proper matching techniques. So from these 5 hospitals, this is the outcome. There was already a database which was there, like called as a support, which was recruiting subjects who had sickness with mortality of 50%. These are the diseases, and we included whoever coming to the ICU in the first 24 hours and excluded all these things. Out of the 9,105 ICU people reached ICU, 5,735. We grouped them as Group A and Group B. Group A RSC performed in 24 hours. Group B, right heart catheterization not performed in first 24 hours. So we have Group A and Group B, and but they were significantly different in many characteristic features. So what we did, we used a formula called as propensity score formula. We took all the parameters and put up in this formula and created one single number for one patient. So it was easy to match between Group A and Group B. Okay, but just to give due respect to significant covariates which is going to influence the outcome, we took propensity score as number one, and whichever we felt it's having direct influence like BP, PF ratio, and age, all these were given individual seats or individual status. And with this 4 or 5 variables, a multivariate regression analysis was conducted, the matching technique. To compare between these two, multivariate regression analysis was done and outcome is placed. Okay, and once a propensity score is given, it was easy to match similar propensity score from team A and team B. If there is no match, they are neglected. As such, 1008 pairs were able to be identified with same propensity scores like 0.2 in A, 0.2 in team B, 0.3 in team A, 0.3 in team B, like that. They were able to be matched very easily. If they are not able to be matched, they are neglected. So 1008 teams or pairs were able to be there, and this is the characteristic features is almost matching with each other. Okay, so have you did a propensity score matching significantly to check that if you cumulatively add all the numbers of team A or all the propensity score numbers of team B, and if you compare, it's going to be a gross variation. Okay, instead you can split the propensity score range from 0 to 20, 20 to 40, 40 to 80, 80 to 100, and you can see are you getting equal number of patients in A and B, right? So that is what this figure represents. And when you split and do this, you are able to see that it contains equal number of people. So all the analysis was done by this software, and even after proper matching with proper propensity score, including due respect to those significant variates and taking into multivariate regression analysis, still it has proved that right heart catheterization is harmful. Okay, so sensitivity analysis was done, whether the study is okay, can this be published? Na? So 13 clinical physicians were practicing physicians were called, and they asked whether are we missing out any confounding factors. They said no, whatever the list they gave, it is already there inside the study. That's number one. And they checked the stability of the results by removing 1 or 2 variates. It was again stable. Okay, then even if there are some missing factors to topple the study results from negative harmful effects of RSC to the beneficial effects of RBC, that confounding factor should be more than 6 times powerful than whatever variates is present here. Okay, so that is going to be less likely, right? If it's going to be 6 times more powerful, the clinicians would have easily identified it. So as a result, RHC proved to be harmful. Explanation is the sepsis and the complication of the catheter itself, and we don't know how much skillful was the physician to read that monitors, and any invasive style of treatment is going to be harmful. The procedure complication will be there, and each and every output that monitor was giving, if you keep on intervening and correcting, titrating, too much of intervention is going to spoil the dish. Then there still can be a missing confounder, who knows. So limitation is still an observational study, friends. It's not a case control study where it's a typical cases and typical controls and you're going to match them, right? Still there could be a missing confounder. Now this is only from 15 ICUs, and association use of RSC in the first 24 hours only is studied. We don't know whether it's useful in the day 4 or day 5 and stuff, right? So RCT has to be performed. So even when you do your thesis or when you do a study between two different groups, if you feel that there are a lot of variables, the team A and team B are different, then use the propensity score formula so that all the characteristics can be put into that formula and made into one single number for one patient. So it'll be easy for matching and giving you a result. Okay, so this study is to teach us what is propensity score. Okay, thank you dear friends. Good night, sweet dreams.